Hello there, my name is Fido and welcome to the Pantheon, where today, Innistrad, it's getting a bit more sinister. You know, we've just got random men, overlooking the ocean. What's more terrifying than that? It's Lier, disciple of the drowned. Okay, I guess if you're learning from the drowned, that's pretty sinister. It's 5 mana to 3/4. Spells can't be countered. Wow, that's quite the line of text, isn't it? And each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard has flashback. The flashback cost is equal to the card's mana cost. That is quite spectacular, to be honest. Like, not being able to counter spells, okay, nobody can counter your spells, but you can't mess with them. So Mono Blue's main sort of, win condition, boring your opponents to death, we've lost that. So what can we do with this deck? Well, flashing anything back, there's quite a few cool things we can flash back. So let's have a look at what they are. But first, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm going to be making videos like this for every single legendary creature, including this one. Wait, no, I'm already doing this one. Anyway, come join me for the journey. And anyway, let's have a look at my top 5. So at number 5, what do we have? Well, we've got High Tide. This might be one of the coolest sort of takes on a High Tide deck for me. Giving High Tide flashback, always been good, and this is a great way to do it. And our commander is 5 mana, so you play this on like turn 2, got a couple of islands out, be able to play it, something like that. But this is a fantastic card. 1 blue until end of turn. Whenever a player taps an island for mana, that player adds blue to his mana pool, in addition to the mana that land produces. So all of our islands are going to tap for double, which means we're going to be able to have massive turns, where we cast this twice, all our islands tap for 3, we're playing some massive spells in them and flashing them back for the same cost. This can just lead to some spectacular turns. Similarly, there's Turnabout, which is fantastic with making all of our islands tap for triple, quadruple, whatever you want. 4 mana for an instant. Choose artifact, creature, or land. So generally we're going to be choosing land. Tap all untapped permanents of the chosen type target player controls, or untap all tapped permanents of the type that player controls. So generally, we're going to be picking land and untapping all of our lands so we can pump more mana into a big X spell or something like that. But we could also use this defensively. Say our opponents are about to swing in for lethal. It's looking a bit dicey. We can tap all of their creatures, live for another turn, and then combo off later. And this is an instant that have a flashback in the graveyard, so we can fog twice with it. It's really, really cool. Then, speaking of making lots of mana, Energy Tap is really awesome. 1 blue for a sorcery, tap target creature you control. Add an amount of colorless mana equals that creature's casting cost to your mana pool. So we can use this 1 blue, tap our commander, make 5 colorless, and then next turn we could flash it back again and just create tons of stuff. And, we really accelerate into those massive turns. Then we've got Drain Power, a fascinating card here. Look at that poor woman's arm. It's become light. Essence light sort of thing going. A bit like Spider-Man. Anyway, 2 blue for a sorcery. Target player activates a mana ability for each land he or she controls, then empties his or her mana pool. Add mana to your mana pool equal to the type and amount emptied from that player's mana pool this way. So if you're playing against a Crewfix deck that's accrued a ton of colorless mana, you just steal it all. And the cool thing about this is you use this, target your opponent. Yeah, they can tap all of their mana in response, but unless they've got a mana sink, you're still going to get all that mana. Really, really cool and excellent against, those blue players. They like to play counter spells. Well, you're not going to be countering anything when this deck's being played because everything's uncounterable, and then you can steal all their mana that they've left open. Then, speaking of making mana, Altar of the Lost is a cool mana rock to put into this deck. 3 mana for an artifact, ends the battlefield tapped. Tap, add 2 mana in any combination of colors to your mana pool. Spend this mana only to cast spells with flashback from a graveyard. So every spell in our graveyard is going to have flashback. So this is fantastic. It's going to accelerate us loads, and it's just so on theme. And it's from an old Dark Ascension set. So, it fits in with the Innistrad vibes. Then there's Catalyst Stone, 2 mana for an artifact. Flashback costs you pay cost up to 2 less. So all of our cards are going to be reduced by 2. And flashback costs your opponent's pay cost 2 more. That bit's, a nice bit of hate. Not that important really though. But reducing all of our cards, incredible. Then, speaking of which, there's Arcane Melee. 5 mana for an enchantment. Instant and sorcery spells cost 2 less to cast. Fantastic, just allows us to reuse everything, can just accelerate you magnificently into the game. And the artwork's lovely. Look at all those sort of lightning bolts that are shooting everywhere. Brings me on to my number 4. And number 4, we've got mental notes and ways to fill up our graveyard. And, you know, cheap cantrips, we can be able to flash them back. And this is an instant, and it mills us for 2, so we're putting more things in the graveyard. 1 blue, put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard, draw a card. Just fantastic. Fills the graveyard, keeps you drawing cards, gets more cards into your hand. It's just great. Just sifts through the deck. And then Thought Scour, its older brother. 1 blue for an instant, or younger, I guess. Yeah, younger. Instant, target player mills 2 cards. We're going to pick me. I'd like to mill some cards. Draw a card. So incredibly simple, but perfect for this sort of deck. Then we've got Strategic Planning, 2 mana for a sorcery. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put one of them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. And then we can flash it back for 2 mana. Just keep going. We can just keep piling all of the good things into our graveyard. It's just good card filtering. Then a fascinating one here. Ray of Erasure. 1 blue for an instant. Target player takes the top card of his or her library and puts it into his graveyard. Or her graveyard. Draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. So it's just a miniature Thought Scour, but it delays the draw. So it's really, really cool. And, you know, look at that artwork. His pelvis is on display. I don't understand what's going on, but it's a cool card nonetheless. Then I've always had a nagging thought about this card. 2 mana for a sorcery. Look at the top 2 cards of your library. Put one of them into your hand and the other into your graveyard. So again, filling the graveyard, nice bit of filtering. And it has Madness. So if you're going to discard this, you can pay it for 2 mana. Not important in this deck, but it may come up, you know, if you're playing against a wheel deck or something like that. Then there's Frantic Search, 3 mana for an instant. Draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards. Okay, filling up the deck, the graveyard. Untap up to 3 lands. Now that is fantastic, especially with all the high tide shenanigans we can get up to. Untapping those lands which tap for 3, this card is insane. And so is things like Snap. Snap isn't in the list, but I'd really play Snap in this deck because it's, you know, free bounces and we get to do it from the graveyard as well. Then we've got the Ataxian Probe. This is the sort of card you want in your hand when you've played your commander, say on turn 5. We could use the Phyrexian mana to cast it for free, just by paying 2 life. Look at target player's hand, draw a card. Ah, wonderful. And then we can flash it back exactly the same. Get us so many cards into our hand. Then that brings me on to my number 3 pick. You're not number 3. We've got, well, the commander says you can't counter things, but I beg to differ. There's quite a few ways that we can circumvent that uncounterable thing and, you know, be able to counter our opponent's things. Divide by 0 is a great example. 3 mana for an instant, return target spell or permanent with mana value 1 or greater to its owner's hand. So yes, it goes back to the hand so they can replay it, but it also has Learn. So, you know, if you're playing more casual EDH, you could put a lesson card you own from outside the game into your hand, but you can discard a card and draw a card. So it's filling up your graveyard, and then you can do it from your graveyard with a flashback on our commander. This card is fantastic with this guy. Then we've got Subtlety. Is that subtle? Anyway, 4 mana for a 3/3 with flash and flying. When it enters the battlefield, choose up to 1 target creature spell or planeswalker spell. Its owner puts it on the top or bottom of their library, and you can evoke it by exiling a blue card from your hand. So yes, this isn't an instant or sorcery, so you can't, you know, flash it back with our commander, but it fits so well because we can sort of counter a spell. Then there's Unsubstantiate, 2 mana for an instant, return target spell or creature to its owner's hand. All of these are so versatile, they do so much, and you know, if someone's got something down while you're tapped out, you can always bounce it back to the hand and then flash it back to keep it in the hand. There's just so many cool plays you can do this, and you can save our commander if you don't want to play the commander tax. There's just so many cool plays. Then there's Mindbreak Trap, 4 mana for an instant trap. If an opponent casts 3 or more spells this turn, you may pay 0 rather than pay Mindbreak Trap's mana cost. Exile any number of target spells. So we're exiling them, we're not countering them. So we don't care if they're uncounterable. We're just going to exile them off the stack. This is fantastic. Look at the artwork. They're just oozing with knowledge, I guess. Or they've eaten some blueberries or something like that. But this is a great spell, and that 3 or more spells this turn for an opponent, that could very much come up. Then an interesting one, we've got Discontinuity. 6 mana for an instant as long as it's your turn. The spell costs 4 mana less to cast. End the turn. There is another version of this, I forget its name, but this is fantastic because ending the turn, it just exiles all spells and abilities off the stack, and it just ceases to exist. Really, really cool. It just works fantastically with this deck. Do we want to cast it on our turn? Probably not, but maybe we do. I don't know. There's crazy things happen at EDH, don't they? Then a sort of counterspell here is Narset's Reversal. 2 mana for an instant, copy target instant sorcery spell, then return it to its owner's hand. You may choose new targets for that copy. Absolutely fantastic. Say someone's casting, I don't know, a massive instant sorcery. You can steal it, bounce it back to the hand. They have to pay all the mana again for it. Wonderful. Really, really good card. And you can flash it back. It's so good. It just works so well. Then we've got Commit and Memory. 4 mana for an instant, put target spell or non-permanent onto its owner's library, second from the top. So it's not countering, but it essentially is, especially if you're using it against commanders. They're not going to want to put it into the library, and then, you know, they're going to have to play it again. So it works really well. Then Memory is a sorcery. You can only cast it from your graveyard, thanks to Aftermath. Each player shuffles his or her hand and graveyard into his or her library, then draws 7 cards. I was really struggling reading like that. That was really hard. I don't actually know if you want to flashback commit. Does it cost you 10 mana or 4? That's a good question. Bit of homework for you. Please tell me in the comments. Then in at number 2, what have we got? Well, what have we got? We've got Shark Typhoon. You know, it wouldn't be a deck without something that had cycling in it. So, Shark Typhoon, 6 mana for an enchantment. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create a XX blue shark creature token with flying, where X is the spell's converting mana cost. And you can cycle it for 2 mana and X. And when you cycle it, it creates an XX blue shark creature token with flying. And of course, you discard it and draw a card. The best mechanic ever printed. So, this is great because we're going to be throwing about a bunch of spells from our hand, from our graveyard, and we can just make a massive army using these effects. And if our commander's on the field, this is uncounterable. Nice. Then, a couple of other great ways to make tokens. Poppet Stitch is a brand new card. 3 mana for a 2/3. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed. It can't block. When it attacks, sacrifice it at the end of combat. So not that great, but, you know, it's a good, body to have around. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 3 or more creature tokens, transform Poppet Stitcher. So we're just going to move past that to Poppet Factory. It's an artifact. Creature tokens you control lose all abilities and have base power and toughness 3/3. So if we're making a bunch of like 1/1 sharks or, these 2/2s with decay, they lose all their abilities and then they become 3/3s. And at the beginning of your upkeep, you can flip it back. So, this is really, really awesome because you can sort of keep making things. Also, the artwork on this is horrendous. Look at all those blue men things. Disgusting. But let's go back to Ominous Roost. 3 mana for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield or whenever you cast a spell from your graveyard, create a 1/1 blue bird creature token with flying. And when this creature can block only creatures with flying. So this, great value. You're getting something straight away as soon as it comes in, and every time we're flashing back a spell, we're going to get one of these little roostlings. Then, fan favorite, the crowd's gone wild. It's Talrand Sky Summoner. 4 mana for a 2/2. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a 2/2 blue drake creature token with flying. It's a classic. Everyone knows this guy. Everyone hates playing against him, but it's really, really good for all of this instant and sorcery shenanigans we're going to be enacting. Then there's Docent of Perfection, 5 mana for a 5/4 flyer. Just a big beater. It's the size of a dragon, usually. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a 1/1 blue human creature token onto the battlefield. Then if you control 3 or more wizards, transform into something else. Basically, it's a 6/5 on the other side. It has the same text, and it gives all wizards +2/+1 in flying, I believe. So you've got a massive flying army, and look at him. He's holding a little vial as he's experimenting on this poor human. Wonderful. Then there's Metallurgic Summonings, 5 mana for an enchantment. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create an XX colors construct artifact creature token where X is that spell's mana value. So, you know, basically Shark Typhoon, except it's not got cycling, so it's terrible. Although there is more. 5 mana and exile it. Return all instant sorcery cards from your graveyard to your hand. Activate only if you control 6 or more artifacts. So this, will it be that impactful? Because we are flashing a lot of things back, you know, putting them into exile. So it could potentially have some play, but not the best thing in the world. It's not good cycling, is it? So terrible. Which brings me on to my number 1 pick. And at number 1, well, through all this flashback, you know, we're going to be casting a lot of things from the graveyard. So let's draw some cards through Secrets of the Dead. 3 mana for an enchantment. Whenever you cast a spell from your graveyard, draw a card. So every time we flash back one of our instant sorceries, we're going to draw a card. So much value, and from just a 3 mana enchantment. It's fantastic, and you're just going to keep going and going and going. Then there's River Kelpie. 5 mana 3/3. When it or another permanent enters the battlefield from a graveyard, draw a card. And whenever a player casts a spell from a graveyard, draw a card. And it has persist, so it dies and comes back with a -1/-1 counter, which in itself will draw you a card. And the cool thing about this is because it's any player, if our opponents, you know, having some shenanigans with a graveyard, we're probably going to be drawing a ton of cards off them. This card just does so much work. Then, I love drawing cards. Trail of Evidence is a cool way of doing it. And making artifacts for metallurgic summonings. 3 mana for an enchantment. Whenever you cast an instant sorcerer spell, investigate. So you get a clue token that you can sack to draw a card. And then, Archmage Emeritus. 4 mana for a 2/2 human wizard. Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant sorcerer spell, draw a card. So this is going to draw you tons and tons of cards. Really, really nice guy. And, you know, it will be a lightning rod for removal, but, you know, you're playing these sort of cards, you have to sort of expect it. Maybe play some lightning greed, something like that. Equip it up straight away. Then here are a couple of big spells that you might want to cast, because we're making a bunch of mana, and all of these we can flash them back. So Time Stretch, 10 mana for sorcery. Target player takes 2 extra turns after this one. Don't get this redirected, because giving your opponent 2 turns is pretty miserable, but at least you can flash it back and then they can redirect it again. Terrible. But really, really good, and a great card to flashback, because a lot of extra turn spells, they exile themselves, and this one, it just sits in your graveyard waiting for you to cast your commander and uncounterably recast it. Then there's Animatu's Augury. 8 mana for sorcery. Exile the top 8 cards of your library. You may put a land card from among them onto the battlefield. 8 mana ramp. I love it. And until end of turn, for each non-land card type, you may cast a card of that type from among exiled cards without paying its mana cost. And then all of these, including the Animatu's Augury, is going to go into the graveyard, and you can flash them all back. So this just generates tons and tons of value. And then, you know, blue doesn't have the best of armies. You know, everyone's playing green, red, massive creatures. Let's steal them all with Clone Legion. 9 mana sorcery. For each creature target player controls, create a token that's a copy of that creature. So that's a nice creator who board state you built up there. I'll have my own and kill you. Absolutely fantastic. Really, really cool spell. And then we'll flash it back. You know, if we've got 18 mana, we'll make 2 board states. Oh my god, somebody stop me. And those are my top 5 cards for Lier. Lier? I don't know how to pronounce his name. Lier? As if you'd leer at a woman? I don't know. Don't do that in public. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. Please subscribe and tell all your friends about me. In a good way. And I'll see you soon. Bye.